Hello and welcome to the 2020 Partner Starter Institute. My name is Courtney Cintron, Ingenuity's Partner Engagement Specialist, and I will be your host throughout this 5-part video series. I come to this work having put my creative energies towards managing and producing an array of arts programs and projects with a number of artist-run spaces and arts organizations in Chicago, from youth arts education initiatives and art exhibitions to poetry, theater, and music programs. I started my path in the arts studying and practicing classical voice and opera performance, and I am very grateful that my journey has led me here to Ingenuity to connect more broadly with the arts partner community, cultivate professional learning opportunities and communities of practice, and to help ensure that CPS youth are receiving the most enriching experiences in the arts as possible. For the past several years, this event has provided new arts partners with all the need-to-know information about working within Chicago Public Schools, building quality programs, best practices in cultivating partnerships, and more. While we will still touch on these topics, we will discuss them through the lens of the current moment. The pandemic, economic crisis, and profound movements regarding anti-racism and systemic oppression are demanding that we rethink arts education and the role of partnerships. This is an unprecedented time for the arts education sector. Students are losing emotional bonds with peers and teachers. Arts educators are worried about being deprioritized due to budget cuts. Organizations are in many ways trying to stay afloat financially, and more. How can we overcome these challenges in an environment that is drastically and continuously evolving? One of our solutions was to create an informed and responsive institute. This week we'll answer your questions about partnering basics while tailoring the content to the current environment. Though this event has traditionally been for new partners, we believe that all partners, new and old, will have something to learn here. To that end, each module has been designed to equip arts partners with tools and resources to support equitable quality programs in CPS this coming school year, and it's all in a fresh new modular format that will hopefully allow you to engage with the content most relevant to your needs. This is our Partner Starter Intro module, Shifting Practice, Preparing for Partnerships. While we will spend some time introducing you to the format and providing a preview of topics, the goal of this module is really for you to understand how approaches to partnerships must be responsive to current needs and shifts within the sector and CPS, and what you can do to prepare for these shifts. I am also joined here today by Anna Corner, our Partnerships and Professional Learning Intern. Anna, can you take a moment to tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Anna Corner. I just graduated from Valparaiso University with a bachelor's in French language and literature and international economics. And I'm spending my summer working with Ingenuity as the Partnerships and Professional Learning Intern. And I have had the awesome task of putting together this year's Partner Starter Institute. So yeah, I've been curating and planning this institute, and I hope everyone enjoys it.
Great, and can you tell us also a little bit more about the Partner Starter Institute, how the series was realized, and what viewers can anticipate throughout?
Thank you, Courtney. Just as you said, the arts education sector is evolving in such a way that we are implored to evolve with it. If we want to offer quality programs through strong partnerships, we might have to rethink what strong programs and partnerships even look like. That is precisely the goal for this institute, to understand what shifts need to take place in partner approaches and to be more equitable and responsive to the evolving sector. This goal will be achieved as we progress throughout the remaining 4 modules. Module 2, Partner Guidelines, addressing the knowns and unknowns. The goal of this module will be to understand the role of the Department of Arts Education in partnering with CPS in a shifting landscape. This module will feature Jess Rodriguez, Operations Specialist from the CPS Department of Arts Education. She will be covering topics from how to become a CPS vendor to remote learning impacts. Module 3, Artlook and Data, using data to drive equitable partnership practices. The goal of Module 3 is to understand how to use data to create partnerships that support underserved communities and those most impacted by COVID-19. This will feature Emily Sabelli, Senior Data Analyst at Ingenuity, and Julia Inoosa, Assistant Director of Education Programs at Arts and Public Life. They'll be covering using artlook to identify gaps in education, customized reporting, and more. Module 4, Professional Learning, Enhancing Impactful Programs. The goal of Module 4 is to identify resources and learning opportunities to create impactful and equitable programs that are responsive to the current environment. This module features Nicole Upton, Ingenuity's Partnerships and Professional Learning Director, and Ariel Frost, the Executive Director of Shift Englewood Youth Orchestra. In this module, Nicole and Ariel will be discussing Ingenuity's professional learning programs that are available at your disposal and using the APSP guide to build strong programs. 5, funding partnership work, new approaches to sustainability. The goal of this 5th and final module will be to identify new approaches to sustainability as it relates to the current environment. This module will feature the Ingenuity Development Team, Christopher Chanson and Brianna Hernandez, as well as the Creative Schools Fund team, Eli Cole and Ola Folletti. They will be discussing topics like the current state of philanthropy and CSF updates. Accompanying each module on our website, you'll find several related tools and resources to help you navigate and engage with the various topics. Modules may also include action steps and reflection questions so that you can continue to think about your practice. Finally, on Friday, August 7th, we will have a live Q&A session. We will be hearing from team members at Ingenuity, the CPS Department of Arts Education, and leaders from the arts partner community. We will be answering any lingering questions you might have. All you have to do is submit them to the Google form linked in the description. Thank you all, and I hope to see you at the live Q&A. I'm going to pass it back to you, Courtney.
Great, thank you for the overview, Anna. So now that we've discussed the format of this year's Partner Starter Institute, let's take a moment to learn how our work this summer has really laid the groundwork for this year's program. I'm going to hand it off to Nicole Upton, Ingenuity's Director of Partnerships and Professional Learning, to tell us a little bit more about that.
Thanks so much, Courtney and Anna, for that great introduction. So with the COVID-19 crisis impacting Chicago's arts education sector, I know many of you feel that very close to home. Ingenuity has been spearheading a collective response to ensure that we don't lose any of those hard-fought arts education gains that we've worked so hard on over the past 9 years. We've been virtually connecting over the last several months with community-wide stakeholders through our new Arts Ed Response Collaborative called ARC. To ensure we proactively address the challenging landscape and lay a sustainable path forward for arts education in the future. As Courtney said, we're in the middle of several really incredible things all at once here. Certainly COVID-19 was where we started, but when you add the dismantling, the movement to dismantle systemic racism as well as our economic downturn, each has been compounding the other and collectively changing the face of arts education as we know it. The vulnerability right now of the arts education sector and many other creative sectors became really clear with COVID. And as a city, we've made so much progress in arts education. We really cannot afford to lose any of the momentum that we have gained. The stakes are simply too high. We're dealing with long-term impacts here of this current moment. These are issues fundamentally of equity and will require us to collaborate, to connect, and respond strategically and in ways that we never have before, which is where ARC and the work of ARC has really come into play. When we began ARC, we had several goals in mind. One was to really understand and listen to the different challenges that were emerging from the arts education partners, the nonprofits, from teaching artists, teachers, students, CPS, network chiefs, and even CPS parents to really understand what are the emerging challenges for arts education. When we started this, we were still in the previous school year, so you can imagine there was a lot of conversation around the challenges of digital learning. We also were really grateful to convene the sector to talk about not only the challenges, but to build a sense of community and connectedness during this time. We often found that just gathering people in the same space together to talk about their challenges was really confirming in this isolating time. Our goal is, by the end of the process, was to really create a roadmap for the arts education sector that was not only aimed at kind of mitigating the current crisis, but really laying an inspirational and aspirational framework for how to move forward without losing any of that important ground that we gained in the past 9 years. So here's what we did. Back in March, pretty quickly after we learned and kind of began to realize what an impact COVID was going to have on our sector and on our children, we began this kickoff project. We gathered a team of ARC advisory members representing everyone in the arts education sector. If you'd like to see a full list of those advisory committee members, I would encourage you to do so. It's listed on our website under our advocacy tab. We met with that advocacy group and together engaged in a strategy retreat to really help us develop the strategy and develop the process for this work itself. And then shortly thereafter, in April, we began engaging the community. And we really had over 100 community members join us to hear and to share what they were experiencing. And again, those different organizations, teaching artists, even the students, really contributed to getting a really clear understanding of the challenges that were happening on the ground. We compiled all of that data, and our next step was to do some share outs with working groups to start setting draft recommendations in place. So it's easy to come up with our challenges, right? Like that's not hard for any of us. The harder thing is to figure out what do we do about those challenges? And that's where our working group feedback sessions really came into play. It was to say, here are the challenges. What are some of our ideas to actually solve those challenges and create actions that are supportive? We've done that now. We are now in the phase of taking all of that data and putting it together, articulating it, synthesizing it into one unified document that will really act as our sector-wide goal plan, game plan, mapping strategy for the next year to come. Clearly, the elephant in the room here is that CPS is in the current process of gathering feedback on their own preliminary restart of school plan. It's important to us that this ARC process and the ARC report really maps to that plan very clearly. So anticipate seeing kind of a release in tandem with CPS's evolved guidance. What I can tell you as a little bit of a preview to the ARC process and what we've heard really clearly through those conversations are very clear guiding principles and values for this work. And some of these might sound kind of familiar to you, right? I think you won't be surprised to hear some of these things, but I think the way and the pushing on these values and principles that we've heard are really pushing us to think even more deeply and robustly about what these words mean to us really in practice. So the first thing is really a broadened and deepened commitment to equity, to more explicitly include racial justice, economic parity, and human dignity in the work that we're doing. And so what we see and what we anticipate sharing with you in this final ARC report is a push on an internal organizational commitment to anti-racism across each of the organizations working with Chicago Public Schools. Also economic parity in organizational structures, making sure that we're including our student voice in our changes within our organization, within our programs, that student agency piece really coming into play very loudly. Data-driven decision-making certainly has always been at the core of our work and will continue to be so. But to continue to use that data to close the gap in arts education for every student in every grade, but to really do so in tandem with work to advance racial justice, and to do so more pointedly, more focused, and in a more deliberate manner. The second principle and value that has really come up clearly in the ARC recommendations has been in radical flexibility and this adaptive capacity to sustain and protect arts education access. You know, the challenge we have to challenge our preconceived notions and build anew. We're at a point where there's no turning back. We're not going back to what life was like before this time. We can only move forward, and that will require us to challenge ourselves and to increase and get more comfortable with experimentation and our threshold for risk when we are working with students and working with our programs, really pushing the boundaries of what our programs can do and how they're designed. It's also going to require us to do really careful scenario planning and be able to turn on a dime and quickly pivot as we anticipate this next year will look different sometimes from week to week and day to day. And also to really commit to strategic collaboration to build leverage from and to amplify diminished field-wide assets and new economies of scale. And then finally, to respond to emerging needs and assets during a time of great change, we must prioritize knowledge sharing and professional learning. We must leverage arts as a tool for recovery. We know how valuable that is. There's certainly been a lot of conversation about the need for trauma-informed practice to meet where students and communities are today, and to build a base around student needs and their assets to support tailoring our work to them. Also, really recommitting to our own authentic learning processes, really being open, honest, and vulnerable about what we know and what we don't know. You know, these are things that we always say we value as a community. We value reflection. We value applied learning. We value continuous quality improvement, but we don't always show up for it. And so committing to showing up, even in virtual spaces, for our own learning is hugely key. When we deprioritize the learning of adults, we subsequently deprioritize the learning of our students. We must not do that going forward. So each of our recommendations that will come out in the subsequent ARC report will be very clearly tracked back to one or more of these values and principles, and will include stakeholder group by stakeholder group actions and calls to action. So what are the next steps? Right now, we are continuing to kind of finalize our ARC data from those conversations that we had. We're also working hand in hand with the team at CPS and the CPS Department of Fine Arts to gather final CPS guidelines. We know you are eager to find out more about how to do this work and how to do your work in schools and what that will look like. We want to make sure those are paired with the feedback from the community conversations happening to then release an ARC report sometime in August. So with that, I will hand it back to Courtney.
Thank you, Nicole, for providing that important context. So that concludes our very first Partner Starter module. We hope that this was a helpful starting point and that you will join us again soon for Module 2, Partner Guidelines Addressing the Knowns and Unknowns, where we'll hear from CPS Department of Arts Education's very own Jess Rodrigue to guide us through understanding the role of the Department of Arts Education and partnering with CPS in the upcoming school year. So you definitely want to tune in for that one. As Anna mentioned earlier, please also join us for the live Partner Starter Q&A session on Friday, August 7th, and submit any questions that you have along the way in the accompanying Google form. While we won't be able to answer all of your questions, we will do our best to address the most frequently asked questions submitted. So if you have any questions throughout the series, don't hesitate to reach out to the professional learning team, Anna, myself, or Nicole. And that's all for today. I'll see you back here again soon. Bye-bye.